An inspiring afternoon to all of our aspiring teachers of BSEDMT 3-1D, and of course to our beloved Professor Dr. Rosalie Corpus. And good afternoon to you too, partner.
Sana all inspired, partner, but kidding aside, an inspiring afternoon to you, especially to our hardworking future teachers who are part of our webinar series that aims to introduce one of lessons in our course, building and enhancing new literacies across the curriculum.
Yes, partner. And we are now in the second week of our webinar series that started last April 12.
Yes, partner, honestly, I learned a lot during the first discussion of this webinar series. But of course, partner, our learnings will not end there.
Correct, partner. We will have more discussions today that will surely provide more knowledge to our participants.
We will fill your minds in the next few hours with knowledge and inspiration from our discussion this afternoon.
You're right, partner. But before we continue, I will introduce myself formally, even though we have known each other for more than 2 years. I am Christian James P. Manalo.
And I am Alliyah Reyes, and we are your Masters of Ceremony. Before we start our program, please be reminded to take screenshots of our webinar as you will need it on our evaluation form. To formally start our program, let us pay homage to the nation to which we owe the gift of education by singing our national anthem.
This will be followed by a short opening prayer to seek guidance for today's activity.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas. Kayang mag-ibig, pero sa sinakalan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyagan ng magiting, sa manlulupin, di ka pasisigil, sa nagatang tutok sa simoy at sa langit ng bangkaw, ay hinatang tulang awit sa paglayangin. Ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nag-iibig, ang bituin at araw niya kailan ang hindi magtitigil. Luman ang araw ng walhagin pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang hindi kaya na pagkay mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Dear God, thank you for the opportunity to meet together. Please help us to come together to make this institution reflect your kingdom. Breathe life into our ideas and decisions. Help us build a team that has love and respect at its heart. Give us the strength to continue working for your kingdom in this time of pandemic. Lord, come give us the inspiration to be the best we can be. May we be a shining example of your goodness and truth within, wherever we are. Inspire our thoughts, discussions, and ideas, and continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth for the greater glory of you. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Good afternoon again to our participants and especially to Dr. Rosalie Corpus, who will share additional inputs after our webinar.
Kaya naman, partner, thank you agad to our classmates who are with us this afternoon to further expand our knowledge on building and enhancing new literacies across the curriculum.
Tama ka dyan, partner. Kaya naman handa na ba ang aming mga participant? Let's see a heart reaction if all of us are now ready to listen on today's discussion.
Mukhang Ikaw. Yan, okay. Mukhang handang-handa na nga ang ating mga participant. But before we proceed on the main focus of our program, let's have a recall about the last webinar talks. Ikaw, partner, ano bang naalala mo?
What I remembered about our first topics are the three subcategories of conventional concept of literacy, which are the basic, comprehension, and the functional or practical literacy. And another topic that I remembered are the different units to better address the need of teachers to be literate in the new literacies, namely the globalization and multicultural literacy, social and financial literacies, media, cyberbullying or digital literacies, eco-literacy, and artistic and creative literacy, and lastly, the critical literacy. Pero partner, baka naman may naaalala rin ang ating mga participants tungkol sa ating last webinar. Ayan, for our participants, please type the 7 key features of 21st century education. Ayan, partner, mukhang na-type na nila lahat.
Nagtatalas naman ng memory ng ating mga participant at naalala pa nila ang mga iyon kahit siksik sa discussion ng naunang topic. But of course, partner, the discussion did not end there because last webinar, the critical attributes of the 21st century education was also discussed, which are the integrated and interdisciplinary technologies and multimedia, global classrooms, creating, adapting to constant personal and social change, and lifelong learning, student-centered, 21st century skills, project-based and research-driven, then relevant, rigorous, and real-world.
And we can see that everyone really listened on the first discussion of our webinar series. But before we proceed on introducing our speakers for today's webinar, we will have an icebreaker game.
Let us call on Ms. Janielle Lucito to introduce and facilitate our game.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ayan. So, yung game natin ngayon is entitled Basta Ka Sumagot. Tapos ang reminder lang, answer the question in the most simplest and innocent way. Next slide. So, para sa mechanics natin, ang pinakauna is kailangan natin ng isang representative per group. Ayan. Isang representative per group. So, yung dapat qualifications ng representative is makapag-on mic siya mamaya, tapos keyboard warrior. Kasi paunahan, sumagot sa chat box. So, kunin muna natin kung sino ang representative of each group. Sino po para sa group 1? Group 1. May Gcash to, ba't parang ayaw niya? May Gcash po to. Ayan. Wait lang. Sige, go lang. Sa group 3, si Phoebe. Okay. Reminder, dapat makakapag-on mic siya mamaya. Group 1 and 4 na lang po. Pa-type na lang po sa chat box kung sino yung representative niyo. So, habang naghihintay, basahin ko na rin yung mechanics. So, unang ipapakita ang picture ng mga tanong. So, yung mga tanong na to is galing sa textbook or exam ng mga bata. Kailangan muna ito basahin ng game facilitator ng 2 beses bago maaaring sumagot ang mga players. After sabihin ng game facilitator ang go, tsaka pa lang maaaring i-type ang sagot sa chat box. Kung sino ang unang makapagbibigay ng tamang sagot, ang siyang makakuha ng puntos, at kung sino ang pinakamaraming puntos, siya ang mananalo. So, mayroon na ring representative yung group 1, si Sheena. Group 4 na lang po. Ayan. So, reminder lang sa mechanics, 2 beses kung babasahin yung tanong, then kailangan muna marinig yung go bago mag-type sa chat box. Group 4 po. Ayan si Jose daw. Okay, so 3 lang yung makikita kung magta-type mamaya sa chat box. So si Sheena, si Phoebe, at si Jose. Okay, for the practice round. Next slide, please. Ayan. The expression quantity A plus B raised to N. Again, expand the quantity A plus B raised to O. Ulit po, reminder, answer the question in the most simplest and innocent way. Lang, hindi siya patamaan. Simplest and innocent way. Ayun, may nakatama na. Next slide, please. Ang tamang... Ayan. A space to N. Ayan. Kaya yung title din ng game natin is Basta Ka Sumagot. Kasi hindi siya patamaan. Okay. Ganun lang siya. Okay, for number 1 question, ito may points na. What ended in 1896? Ulit. What ended in 1896? Go. Sige lang. Go lang. Kaya niyo yan. Yun. Tama si Sheena. 1 point for group 1. Next slide. The answer is 1895. Ayan. Next. Anong sinulat ng bata after ng chemical symbol HCOONA? Isa pa? Anong sinulat ng bata after ng HCOONA? Go. Ayan, may nakatama na. Ang tamang sagot ay matata. 1 point for group number 3. Naghahabulan yung group 1 and group 3. Next. When Queen Elizabeth I came to the throne, what was the first thing she did? When Queen Elizabeth I, what was the first thing she did? Go! Reminder lang sa mga play na yung go. So ano muna to? Ang tawag doon? Invalid kasi hindi nakikinig sa instruction. So, ang tamang sagot dito ay ayan. Reminder lang, nagagalit si Angelo. Go muna bago sagot. Go muna bago sagot. Ayan, next. So, tig 1 point pa rin yung yung group 1 and group 3. Ayan, nasa na tayo. Question number 4. Sa question number 4 naman, paunahan mag-raise hand. Hintayin nyo muna yung go bago kayo mag-raise hand. Okay. Brainstorm verbs. What do you like to do with your friends and family? Complete the sentences below with action verbs like jump, dive, float, or swim. Again, brainstorm verbs. What do you like to do with your friends and family? Complete the sentences below with action verbs like jump, dive, float, or swim. Go! Hindi ko pala makikita kasi nakikita. Okay. May nag-raise hand na ba? Okay, si Jose. On mic po.
Wait lang.
May 5 seconds.
Ano? I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it.
Now, sweet todo pa. Tama. Yan. I like to move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it, move it. I like to move it. So, may tigwa 1 point na lahat ng group. So, mahalaga yung last 3 questions. Next. Balik tayo sa chat box dito. What do you think is the best solution to overpopulation? Support your arguments with examples. What do you think is the best solution to overpopulation? Support your argument with examples. Go! Keyboard warrior si Jose. Ang tamang sagot ay next slide po. The Hunger Games. Tama. For the last 2 questions. Let's go. Ayan. Paano maging isang bayani? Iguhit ang iyong sagot. Magsulat ng pangungusap tungkol dito. Paano maging isang bayani? Iguhit ang iyong sagot. Magsulat ng pangungusap tungkol dito. Go! Naknang. Ayan. So, ang nakuha ulit ng puntos ay si Jose. Tama yung sagot niya kompleto. Ako si Bayani Agbayani, susubukan ko maging bayani. Gagawin ko ang 8-8. So, 2 points na para kay Jose, tapos tig 1 si Sheena at si Phoebe. For the last question, baka may mag-type pa. The solid figure can be described as. The solid figure can be described as. Go. Wow, nauna si Okay. May nakatama po. Okay lang yung pipi. Ang tamang sagot ay Pac-Man. Ayan. Okay, tali muna natin yung score. Wait lang po. Pay tayo konti. Patali po ng score. Para sa group 1, meron kayong 2 points. Para sa group 3, meron kayong 1 point. At para sa group 4, meron kayong 2 points. So, tie ang group 1 at group 4. Hati sila. Hati sila sa panalo. So, pakisenda lang po ng GCash kay Alliyah para makuha ang inyong prize. Thank you!
Ayan, thank you, Miss Janielle. It seems like our participants enjoyed our icebreaker game, and congratulations to our winners. And to increase our knowledge, here are our speakers to discuss the 4 topics of our webinar today. And these are the strategies for the development of emergent literary skills and teaching resources, the beginning reading skills and teaching resources, developing functional literacy, and 21st century literacy skills and teaching resources.
For our first speaker, she graduated junior high school with honors at the Philippines Pasay Chunghwa Academy, where she also served as classroom secretary from 2010 to 2017, vice president of Journalism Club, secretary of High School Glee Club, grade 10 coordinator of Communications Club, and a consistent honor from 2009 to 2018. She graduated senior high school with honors, Strand at the Manila Titana Colleges, where she was also designated design committee lead and was an active member of Panitic Club. In college, she first pursued Bachelor in English Education from the Philippine Normal University. She was a Dean's Lister for academic year 2020 up to 2021. She then transferred to our very own Polytechnic University of the Philippines as a Bachelor of Secondary Education major in English. Let us all give a virtual clap for Miss Trixie Mae. Go.
Our second speaker, he graduated junior high school with high honors and senior high school with high honors Gastran from the John G. Russell Memorial High School, San Miguel, Bulacan. During elementary, he was also a qualifier in the National Schools Press Conference 2013 held at Ormoc City, Leyte, and the fifth placer National Schools Press Conference 2014 held at Clark Olongapo City, Zambales. In his high school years, he won first place in the 2019 EdDis3 Mathematics competition in Bulacan. He was a leadership awardee for 5-year service in the Supreme Student Government of his school. He also served president of English Club once, his school student publication, editor-in-chief for 3 years. He is also currently a president's lister at the PUP College of Education. He is a former president of the Mathematics Road to Excellence, is the incumbent editor-in-chief of the Limestone, and the student publication of PUP College of Education. Let us all give a virtual clap for Mr. Paul Marcine Dayog.
Hello po. Am I audible? Pa-heart react naman po kung audible po ako sa inyo. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Yes po, audible.
Thank you very much sa ating MC for your very generous introduction to us, your speakers. Again, I am Paul Marcine Dayog, and also we have Ms. Trixie Go for another speaker who will discuss to you the Unit 2 of our course, Building and Enhancing New Literacies across the curriculum. Our Unit 2 would be all about teaching strategies for the development of literacy skills and teaching resources. Ayun. Ako kadalasan kung style ko sa pag-discuss, lalo na kung mas yung palagay ko ay maganda yung topic, is bakit ba natin kailangan pag-aralan? Why do we need to study the topic? So we will start our talk today with simple situations that present the current situation of our country and the world when it comes to literacy. Next slide, please. Ayun po. Okay, but first, let us have our house rules. Okay, be on time. And I am glad na marami po tayo ngayon dito. We are 43 now in the Zoom. Next would be quiet unless hiniling po namin yung inyong participation. Raise hand if may gusto po tayong clarification. Be attentive dahil mahalaga po yung ating topic, especially tayo ay mga future teachers. And last and the most important one is to participate actively. Kaya naman po palambing nga po ulit ng isa pa uling heart reaction para po makita natin kung nagpa-participate po talaga tayo ngayon sa ating webinar. Ayan, thank you very much po sa mga nag-heart react. Next slide na po tayo. Okay, we will have our introductory discussions now to further mapalalim natin yung pag-unawa natin sa topic kung bakit ba siya mahalaga. Okay, next slide. Okay, alam nyo ba na may lumabas na article? Ayan, may new report na lumabas nitong April 3 lang, reported by the Philippine Star for us na may secret amount daw po na nawawala sa ating ekonomiya every year dahil sa problema natin sa illiteracy. So, magkano kaya yun? Magkano kaya yung nawawala sa Pilipinas taon-taon due to the problems of illiteracy? Let us reveal na our secret number. Oh, as you can see, we have 258 billion pesos na nawawala sa problems natin sa illiteracy. Sa Pilipinas pa lang yan, sa Pilipinas. And as a matter of fact, pagdating sa buong mundo, $1.19 trillion ang nawawala sa buong mundo sa ekonomiya ng buong mundo, sa global economy dahil sa mga problema sa illiteracy. Ano po yung mga pinagkunan ng number na ito? Next slide, please. Ayun. Ito po yung ilan sa mga simple stats na nakakaapekto dun sa pagkakatuos ng 258 billion. Tinataya po na may 750 million adults or 2/3 noon ay mga babae ang lacking basic reading and writing skills. 258 million naman pong mga children and youth are out of school. 6 out of 10 children and adolescents are not learning a minimum in reading and math. Ito po yung pinakamabigat na yung last nating point, yung pinakamabigat na epekto sa ekonomiya. Because kapag daw po ang tao ay may poor literacy skills, 2 beses na mas mababa yung tsansa o mas mataas yung tsansa na maging unemployed siya. 2 beses na mas mababa yung tsansa na magkaroon siya ng trabaho. Dito po sa material ko na hawak ngayon, at na ipapadala din po namin later after ng ating discussion, ay nagbanggit pa po ng ibang mga dahilan kung bakit mahal ang impact ng illiteracy sa atin. Meron tayong tinatawag na economic impact. Yun nga po yung mga nawawala sa ating economic opportunities na umaabot ng $1.19 trillion sa global economy. More than 2 billion adults worldwide don't have necessarily skills to be employed. Unemployment causes loss of productivity which slows the economic growth. Sa social impact din po, meron sinasabing mas mataas ang impact sa pagdating sa mga kababaihan ng pagiging out of school kaysa sa mga kalalakihan. Tulad po nun, lumalawak yung tinatawag nating gender gap, hindi lang sa access to education, kundi pati sa employment. Sa health impact naman po, kapag mababa ang iyong literacy skills, kadalasan naaapektuhan yan yung mga mothers sa poor areas kasi wala silang access sa natal care, sa prenatal, postnatal, and yung pagbubuntis nila. Ganon din po sa pangkalahatan dahil hindi mababa yung literacy skills nila, hindi nila alam kung saan sila pwedeng maka-access nung tinatawag nating mga health services. Yun po yung ilan lang sa mga impact na binabanggit. Kaya umaabot sa atin sa Pilipinas pa lang ng 258 billion pesos yung nawawala dahil lang may problema tayo sa literacy skills. Gaano ba kalala yung ating mismong problema sa literacy? Next slide po. Tayo sa Pilipinas, ano ba yung ebidensya na nagsasabing meron tayong problema sa literacy? Ayan nga po, as reported by the Philippine Daily Inquirer, tapos sinite din po ng Philippine Business for Education, how bad are Filipino learners at reading? 9 in 10 Filipino learners are unable to read and understand a simple text by age 10. Ito pong sinite nilang study, although ito ay ni-report ng World Bank kailan lang. Ngunit yung sinite nilang study ay yung 2019 na international assessment dun sa pagbabasa ng mga bata. At consistent po PISA or TIMSS, pati po yung CPLM. Yung CPLM, ang kasali lang po doon ay mga Southeast Asian countries. Napapakita na tayo ay nahuhuli. Kung hindi tayo last, second to the last. Ganun po kalala yung problema natin sa reading at sa literacy. At yung pong pagka-iwan natin na yun, isa po sa tinutulong dahilan ay yung hindi nauunawaan ng mga bata or the learners simply do not understand what they are reading. Kaya po, ano kaya yung isa sa pwedeng nagiging problema natin sa ating mga learners? Bakit kaya nahihirapan silang maunawaan yung pagbasa? Ngayon po, dito natin ipapasok yung pinaka-topic natin ngayon. Next slide please. Nagkaroon na tayo ng parang overview kung ano yung ating yung sitwasyon ng ating literacy sa Pilipinas. Let us have our topic outline. Mag-umpisa po tayo with the strategies for the development of emergent literacy skills and teaching resources. Second would be the beginning reading skills and teaching resources. And last two would be the developing functional literacy and the 21st century literacy skills and teaching resources. So, sa una po nating topic, ayan, mapapansin nyo po na meron tayong strategies for the development of emergent literacy skills and teaching resources. Next slide, please. Ngayon, let us define muna ano ba yung tinatawag nating emergent literacy. I want you to watch this video.
Are you reading in the bathtub? Are you reading in the bathtub? Nay, nay, nay. Is that a good book? Yeah.
Ayun, that ends the video. Okay, type naman po sa chat box. Ano po yung napansin ninyong commonality dun sa mga batang ipinakita sa video? Ano po yung napansin ninyong pagkakatulad ng mga bata sa ating video? Ayun po, hintay po tayo ng mga 1 minute. Tingnan natin. Patay po kung ano po yung napansin yung pagkakatulad ng mga bata sa video. Ayun, parang they are showing interest in pero hindi pa nila fully nababasa, parang silang nagmamambol. Ayun. At yan po yung pinakamainam na description ng ating unang topic ngayon. Let us have our next slide. Yung pinakita po ng mga bata ay yung tinatawag nating emergent literacy. Yung emergent literacy po, according to Marie Clay, inintroduce niya noong 1966, it is the earliest behavior and concepts of young children employ in interacting with books even before they are capable of reading in the conventional sense. Ito daw po yung pinakamaagang behavior, mga behavior saka yung concept na yung mga bata ay nakikipag-interact sa libro kahit hindi naman talaga nila totally nababasa yung libro. Nagpapakita na sila agad nung potential para magbasa. Ito pa po, our second definition, it signals a belief that in literate society, young children, even 1 and 2-year-olds, are in the process of becoming literate. Ito po kasi dati ay theory. So ito po ay paniniwala daw po na yung mga bata as early as 1 and 2 years old, as long as nakikipag-interact na sila, nandun na sila sa hobby o yung act ng pag-browse ng reading materials, ay it already show na parte na sila ng tinatawag nating literate society at nandun na sila sa proseso ng pagiging literate. So sa ating una pong topic na i-represent sa atin ni Miss Trixie Mae, she will discuss how this emergent literacy will be affecting our literacy hanggang makaabot tayo sa matataas na level ng literacy. So I give you our second speaker, Miss Trixie Mae.
So, good day everyone. I am Trixie Mae W. And I would like to start this off by saying that I do apologize that I can't meet with you today live. It is because I am currently sick and it's very difficult for me to speak for long periods of time. It's a lot of pressure on my throat and it's very uncomfortable for me. You may hear a couple of sounds or noises every now and then. I also apologize for that, but it's not like I can turn it off. So I hope that you do understand. And you may notice that there's going to be a lot of cuts and pauses in between. This is to give myself some time to catch my breath or to cough because it is very uncomfortable for me to speak. And I have to resort to speaking slower and softer in order to not put any more strain that I already have on my throat. There's also going to be a lot of mistakes every now and then, so I just want everyone to understand that it is okay to make mistakes. You don't have to hide whenever you do that, and we're not perfect beings, so it's okay. It's not that I'm saying that to make myself feel better, because I am anticipating making a lot of mistakes in between. But aside from that, I hope that everyone can extend each other some kindness and consideration because it goes a long way whenever we do that. Anyway, let us proceed to the discussion, which is strategies for the development of emergent literacy skills and teaching resources. Okay, now that we are proceeding to the discussion portion, I hope that future me is going to have enough time to put in subtitles for you to better understand what I am saying. But if not, I do apologize for that as well. I hope that you are able to understand what I am saying either way. So, to understand what are some strategies that we can take to develop emergent literacy skills, we must first understand what emergent literacy is. It is basically the skills that we need to prepare for reading and writing. They are the building blocks, the foundations, and even you may even consider it as prerequisite so that we can learn how to read and write better. Next, how is it going to be exhibited? in real life. You may see it in the form of repeating words, phrases from the environment, recognizing patterns, words, faces, symbols, having an interest in listening to stories because they are filled with so much words that you may not be familiar with. And even drawing pictures, you may have done that when you were younger, drawing on walls or on papers if you were given any of those materials. And these are basically characteristics that you are exhibiting emergent literacy skills. But these are certain characteristics that would be shown when you are younger, when you are children, toddler, or among those age groups. Because you are still trying to learn how to speak properly or communicate what you want from the people that are around you or your caretakers. Okay, now let us proceed to what are some emergent literacy skills. Let's put a label on what they actually are or how can we identify them. We are going to have oral language, phonological awareness, print awareness, letter knowledge, and shared book reading. So we're going to start off with oral language. These are basically verbal cues typically done by babies in order for them to communicate with us. They may exhibit it in the form of mumbling or crying to grab our attention. And since they can't actually form words yet, they try to make different sounds that grabs our attention or do any sort of action just to grab your attention towards them. So in this example, we have when a baby starts to babble, to communicate, and making sounds before saying actual words like dada or mama. That's why sometimes parents would anticipate their child to say mama or papa first because they would say ma, da, da, like those sort of examples. Next, we have phonological awareness. These are basically making sounds turn into words. So it's kind of like oral language, but leveled up version of it. So in this, we have different examples because there's a lot of subcategories under phonological awareness, which we will be tackling later on further in our discussion. So I'll just give you a brief overview of it. So the examples first here are trying to isolate the different sounds in a word, much like in the word mama. You would say mama, or counting syllables. So the example word is procrastination. I could have used simpler words to start off with, but it would be nice to use common words that we normally use to give you a better understanding of how it applies to us. So for procrastination, it is 5 syllables and you would count it as 5. Next, we have rhymes. So expectation, desperation. The last syllable or the last part would be the last two parts rather are very similar to one another, and that is how rhymes usually end up being. They sound similar, so they flow nicer when you mention it. Okay, next we have print awareness. So this is our introduction to the written language, and basically it talks about some notable features or principles of reading that helps us to learn, or certain rules that we should consider when we are trying to learn how to read. So this could be exhibited by reading from left to right, up to down, or right to left, depending on what sort of media or reading material you are trying to look into. And other examples would be knowing that words are separated by spaces in between, and that words are basically made up of a lot of letters. That's how print awareness works. Now we have letter knowledge. So this is possibly a prerequisite of print awareness. You have to know what letters are, what are alphabets. That is why it is known as alphabet knowledge as well. I'm sorry for the noise, those are my cats. So basically, letter knowledge is knowing how different letters sound, what they could actually mean if you put them up together, and you could introduce this by having a lot of building blocks for kids that have letters on them, and you are actually making them more familiar with the printed language and developing their print awareness at the same time. That's how it is. So last but not the least, we have shared book reading. These are basically helping to develop the other skills that we had mentioned earlier: phonological awareness, print awareness, oral language, so on and so forth, because you are able to learn more as you read more. That's basically how the idea works. So you can do this by having a teacher guide you through oral recitation. The teacher would have to read the textbook out loud first, and then have the students repeat what she said. Or you can utilize picture books with simple sentences and words that a child already knows or are familiar with. And you can even utilize rhyming words so that you can interest them in reading more. Since it sounds nicer, the idea is that they may be more interested in knowing more. That's how shared book reading works. Now we will proceed to the next slide, please. Now we will be going on to the strategies that we can do to develop the emergent literacy skills and some teaching resources for it too. These are pictures and objects, letters and words, sounds, and read aloud experiences. But do note that these are just a couple of examples that we are providing to you. You can also do your own research, find some other unique or revolutionary strategies to develop these skills, and you can even read up more about it in the learning materials provided for this discussion. So we'll start off with pictures and objects. You have to always remember that these are children or individuals that are not yet acquainted with actual word usage. So with pictures and objects, you can actually let them draw or have picture books and constantly repeating the names of objects to let them identify each one, and even using toys so that they are constantly practicing or at least familiarizing themselves with different objects, as well as stimulating their minds to correlating one another, because children are very smart. They are like sponges. They are usually described as such, where they constantly absorb knowledge around their surroundings and with the use of their senses. Next are letters and words. You can use a lot of different toys or materials that are very colorful and interactive with children, much like what you can see in the pictures. They are toys that children can play with. You can also make word walls, so you are connecting each letter to a different letter or to a word or even to another picture that they can identify. You can even use musical games that focus on alphabet, because music can be can make you remember easier because there's a tune that you can follow with. So those are a lot of different activities that you can use to develop letters and words of a child. Okay, next we have sounds. So much like what I have mentioned earlier, you can utilize music to help with the development of it, of emergent literacy skills, or you can even be the tool yourselves. So you can repeat sounds and have them repeat back at you so that they'll be more familiar with how each letter actually sounds like. You can also respond to them a lot of the different times because the reason why we are learning oral language or emergent literacy skills is because we want to communicate to others. And by responding, they're understanding what each correlate to what. So if they say this, you would respond like that. So you can even have an activity where you mimic animal sounds. So what does a cat sound like? You would say meow. What does a dog sound like? You would bark. What does a cow sound like? You would say moo, so on and so forth. So you would utilize sounds to their advantage because that's how we produce words. That's how we are able to communicate right now. I am producing sound, so I am able to speak sentences like that. Last but not the least, we have read aloud experiences. It is very similar to shared book reading. You are reading a piece of text and then you are letting other people listen to you or have them read back to you what you just have read, what you have just read, rather. So the only way for this to work is if students or children already have prior knowledge on how to read words and how to read text. Even if you use a lot of, excuse me, so even if you use a lot of picture books or a lot of rhyming stories, it would not do any good, so to speak, because they won't be able to understand or know how to read the text. So that is the reason why we would use a guided learning approach where the teacher would read them slowly, repeat them, and use the book as material to learn different words and be familiar to how to read. Like learning that words are separated by spaces and the intonation of how words should be. Okay, so now that we have finished that, we shall proceed to beginning reading skills and teaching resources. Now, it's going to be a bit more difficult than the first discussion because it is a lot more technical and there are a lot of subcategories that we have to go through so that you'll be able to understand how each one correlates to one another. Usually at this time of the day, there's going to be a lot of people playing music outside. I don't know if you're able to hear that, but we shall proceed so that we'll able to finish it. Okay, we'll start with phonemic awareness, but before we actually learn what phonemic awareness is, we must first understand phonological awareness, which we have already discussed earlier, or at least a brief overview of it. So, phonological awareness is an umbrella term. It has a lot of different subcategories, and usually it talks about the skills that are under the spoken language and a lot of rules or principles under it. So, its subcategories are word level, syllable level, onset and rhyme level, and phonemic awareness. Now, phonemic awareness is a subcategory of phonological awareness, much like what we have mentioned earlier. That is focused on sounds and words. We will discuss it further later on. We shall proceed to the different levels of phonological awareness. Okay, so for phonological awareness, we have word level. This involves rhyming, alliteration, and sentence segmentation. We are not going to go further into each one because that is not the main purpose of this discussion. So let us just give a couple of different examples to help you understand what each are. So for rhyming, we have despair, declare, affair. So each last syllable sounds similar to one another even if the spellings may be different. So that's usually how rhymes work rather. Next, for alliteration, we have cute, carefree, cat. So alliteration is the same letter that can be found at the start of the word. I just thought that cats are nice. That's why that is an example of it. Next, for sentence segmentation, we are actually dividing the sentence into words. So we are counting how many words are in a sentence. So the amount of workload is piling up. We have 7 words. That is sentence segmentation. Next, we have syllable level. So basically counting how many syllables are in a word. So I use some very common words in our generation. We have disappointment, disappointment. So that's 4 syllables. Tired, 2 syllables. Boredom, 2 syllables. That's basically what syllable level is. Now, onset and rhyme level is going to be a bit more complicated because it is more focused on linguistics. Unless you have taken that, this might be a new concept for you. So I'm just going to give you a simplified version of it. Onset, when we are talking about onset and rhyme, we are talking about individual syllables. That is the reason why I have chosen 1 syllable words for my examples. So, onsets are usually the first letter of that syllable and they are consonant. If there is no consonant in the first syllable, then, if there is no consonant in the first letter of that syllable, then you are going to take off or you're going to negate onset. So let's say, let's say that the word is oil. There is no consonant in that word, so there is no onset in that word. So for these examples, we have fish, F, long, L, talk, T, dead, D, or D, sad, or S. So for the rhymes, actually it actually has another layer to it. So we have nucleus and coda, CODA. So to make it simpler, we'll just treat it as one whole thing, a rhyme. Rhymes usually start with a vowel and it encompasses the rest of the letters of the word. So for this, we have fish, we have the ish, the ong, the ok, the ed, the ad of sad. So to give an example of what the nucleus and the coda are, let's say we have fish. We know that the onset is F, the rhyme is ish, but then we can divide it even further. So nucleus are usually the vowels or any letters that sounds like a vowel in that syllable. So Y, the letter Y can usually sound like I. I cannot think of any examples where Y sounds like an I right now, but you can maybe understand it when you find it, something like that. Next, the rest of the consonants of that syllable, like the last parts, they are the coda. And that's how it is. Okay, now that we're done with phonological awareness, we will go further to the levels of phonemic awareness skills. So we have phonemic identity, phonemic isolation, phoneme substitution, word segmenting, oral blending, and sound deletion. Now, this may look like a lot, so we'll try to tackle it one by one. phonemic identity, we have to understand what phonemes are first. It is a unit of spoken language, which means sounds. They are sounds. Phonemes are sounds. So we are identifying sounds. What are the different words that we can make by having a similar sound? So for this example, we have S. So it makes the sound S. So what words can we make from the sounds? So we have sneaky, slapping, salmonella, or salmonella. I don't know how to pronounce it properly, but you get the gist. Or sana mahalin ka pero wala. You understand that concept. S. Another example, we have W or W. W. So, wallet, welcome, water. Wala ka ng pag-asa makahanap ng jowa sa pag-self-sabotage mo. So, you understand. We are trying to identify what sounds there are in certain words and what can we make out of it. What other words can we make out of the sounds? Next, we have phonemic isolation. Honestly, when I think of isolation, I think of dance because there are a lot of isolation movements. And you can identify which part is isolating. I don't think that's the right term, but isolation. So for this example, we are trying to understand what sounds go first. What is the first sound? What is the last sound? Middle sound, so on and so forth. So an example is cat, to make it simple. So we have CAT or K, A, T. So the sound K is the first sound that we have for the word cat. The T is the last sound, and the A is the middle or the second sound. So that is how phonemic isolation works. And it can also be done with longer or more syllable words. Okay, so the next one is phoneme substitution. We are replacing a certain phoneme or a sound in a certain word and replacing it with something else. Else, oh my God. So my examples are a stag or a male deer. You replace the sound g to a b and you can make it into a word called stab. Mananaksak ka. So another example, we have stack. You can replace the a or the a sound to make it into words like stuck or stick. Or you can even replace the C sound to stock or stank. So that's how phoneme substitution works. You're just going to replace a certain sound from a word and make a different word. Okay, so word segmenting is basically trying to dissect each sound of a given word. To make it easier, we are using one syllable words, but you can also do it to longer words or longer syllables. So we have the word bird. So we are dividing each letter or each sound. So we have b, a, r, d, bird. Or the word talk, t, a, u, k. Actually, or k rather. Actually, the L part here is silent, so it doesn't really work. So that is how word segmenting works. You have a word and you are going to dissect it by sounds. Next, we have oral blending. Sorry for that. We have oral blending, which is basically doing word segmenting but in reverse. So rather than starting with the actual word, you are starting with the sounds first and trying to analyze what word is being pronounced by all those sounds or word sounds. No, we're talking about sounds, phonemes. So the examples here are k, a, t. What word can you make from it? K, a, t. Cat. Another example is b, a, r, k. B, r, k. Bark. It sounds silly when you do it individually, but basically we are trying to develop our pronunciation skills and word association. Last but not the least is the sound deletion. We are removing sounds from a word. So in phoneme substitution, we are replacing. In sound deletion, we are actually removing a letter or a sound in the word. So the examples here are shot. You can take out the S and it becomes hot. Or tank, without the K, it becomes tan. So for this one, you are actually just learning how to learn. Oh, wait. You are learning how to analyze words if you are removing a certain sound from it. Are you able to still know what is left of the word if you remove a certain letter from it? So you can even be taught by saying, what if we removed the H sound in shot? So you will know that S or shot. So t, sought. So the remaining letters of that word is going to be sought. That's how sound deletion works. You are trying to learn how to analyze or even retain what's left of the word, even if you remove sounds from it. Okay, now we are going into phonics instruction, and it is basically an introduction to the written language. We are trying to analyze the symbols, which we usually call as alphabet because they are letters and they mean something to us, and graphemes, which is the smallest unit of a writing system. So similar to phonemes, they are the sounds, you know. Okay. So we have 4 different methods of the phonics instruction. We have synthetic phonics, analytical phonics, analogy phonics, and embedded phonics. Okay, now that we are tackling phonics, we are understanding the correlation of the sounds that we produce to the actual letters in text. Now we'll start with synthetic phonics, which is an intentional way of learning how the sounds that we make equals to a certain letter. So for this example, we have the word cactus. We would sound it out as k, a, k, t, s. Oh, t, u, s. I forgot the u. And if you blend it all together, it is cactus. So a way to learn it, you're going to show a picture of a cactus and a label of it at the bottom. And then you would sound out each letter individually. So you would say k, and then you point out the letter C. Then you do it repeatedly for each letter. That's how you learn synthetic phonics. And you can do it to a lot of different words. I just use cactus because it's a bit more difficult to do. Next, we have analytical phonics, which is learning word association. What is similar in certain words and understanding their rhymes as well. So in this example, we have green, grass, grow, great, grape. So what are the similar sounds in it? So we have the sound gr, and you are identifying it by knowing that each word has that sound. Gr, gr, green, grass, grow, grape, grape. And by doing so, we are learning how to avoid isolating each letter when we are speaking. Because it'll be difficult if you're trying to speak, and every time that you say a certain word, you have to say the individual sounds for it. And that's how analytical phonics works. Next, we have analogy phonics, which is very similar to analytical. It is a variation of it, and it focuses on phonograms or rhymes in linguistics, which we have tackled earlier as well. Rhymes are the later part of a syllable that has a vowel and consonants at the same time. So the examples for it, we have, if you were given this rhyme, at, what certain words can you make out of it? So you can have bat, cat, hat, mat, pat, chat, or that. So you are more focused on the rhymes aspect of it. And lastly, we have embedded phonics, which is playing on the natural or authentic way that we learn how to read. And usually it involves a lot of guided reading practices as well. So a teacher will read the text and explain the phonemes and graphemes in it. So it's a bit more complicated to learn the actual words because you are heavily reliant on what is being said or shown to you. So it is not really advisable, but based on what I have read, it is more usable if we incorporate each and every phonics type. Okay, so we have tackled the important building blocks for learning how to read and write. Now we are tackling fluency instruction, which we are understanding the speed, the accuracy, the proper expression, and proper enunciation of your words when you read verbally. So we have two methods for it. We have guided oral reading, which involves the repetitive practices on verbally reading written text, and independent silent reading, which is more on trying to interest the child into reading more so that they can develop their vocabularies and fluency and even comprehension of the given text. So there are a lot of different strategies to doing so, and you can even search other methods in order to develop it. In my research, there are a lot of readings that would be done to develop it. So, a lot of verbal guided trainings, like reading out poetry, reading out song lyrics, and having someone read for you, which you will imitate or try to support as a reader as well. And even a very popular exercise, which is reader's theater, where students will read out a script and then they will rehearse for a play or performance. And that's under guided oral reading. As for independent silent reading, this is more on reading, actually reading a lot of different books and having feedbacks as a reader. What are the certain strategies that would help you in understanding the text and reading it to a more comfortable speed? But also, since fluency is testing out the accuracy and proper enunciation of the words, there are other assessments that must be done to make sure that you are progressing in your fluency. So we have reading rate and rubrics. So there's not a lot of technical assessments that can be done for it, aside from knowing how fast you can read, or the WCPM, words correct per minute rate, and a rubrics that grades your comprehension and proper enunciation of words. Next, we have vocabulary instruction, which is very important because it supports your reading skills and learning developments, because when we are speaking, we are using words. We cannot really use words properly if we don't know what they mean. That is why we have to develop our vocabularies as much as possible. And ways to develop your vocabulary instruction is by indirect vocabulary instruction, which is reading a lot, being exposed to a lot of different words by watching a lot of media that uses a lot of eloquent words, verbose, using a lot of different words even though it's unnecessary. So learning through that, or even through direct vocabulary instruction. So being conscious of words, direct and explicit instruction, analyzing word structure, and most importantly, context clues. You can go a long way by just knowing how to look out for context clues. If they are actually mentioned earlier in the text or the paragraph, you can actually infer what they could mean based on what you have known about it. That's how it is. Okay, last but not the least, and I do want to rest, so let's make it quick. My throat is giving up on me, and it is very much in pain right now. We have comprehension instruction, meaning we are critically analyzing texts and understanding their meaning. It is a very essential skill for any good reader because you are digesting the text that you are reading and understanding the underlying symbolism of it all. So, how do we develop comprehension? Well, we have to monitor it. Monitoring it by understanding what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, how do we develop it more by paying close attention to it, to details. And metacognition is basically thinking about thinking. So, allowing us to have more control over what we read, the strategies that we could use for it, and developing our reading skills. That's how metacognition works. Then we can use a lot of different organizers to list down the different information that we have gathered from what we have read. Then, obviously, in order to develop our comprehension, we have to continuously ask questions. We have to be curious about everything and anything. And you can also develop it by answering those questions or answering the provided questions for that specific text. We could also do it by reorganizing or at least recognizing story structures, like what are the settings, what are the characters, what are the rising action and climax of a story, so on and so forth. And the most important one is summarizing, because you are expressing all of the information and the knowledge that you have gathered from what you have read, and doing so by expressing it in your own words. That is how summarizing works. And that's all of the building of reading skills and strategies that we could do to develop our emergent literacy skills. Thank you once again for listening and for tolerating the way that I speak, because it is very difficult right now. Thank you for understanding and have a good day ahead. Bye!
Thank you so much to our speakers. Ayan, Mr. Paul started the talk with the economic problem of the Philippines due to the impact of illiteracy. And he mentioned earlier that there has been a drastic economic impact of illiteracy in the Philippines, and it is reported that 258 billion pesos ang nawawala sa Pilipinas due to illiteracy. Some of the problems are there are 200 million people out of school youth children, and 750 million adults still lack basic reading and writing skills. Ikaw, partner, anong natutunan mo sa nauna nating discussion?
Yes, what I got from the whole discussion is that effective teaching strategies for developing literary skills involve utilizing a variety of techniques such as phonics and word recognition and comprehension to cater different learning styles, and incorporating technology and educational resources to enhance engagement, while appropriate teaching resources such as diverse range of high quality books, graphic organizers, and visual aids can expand students' vocabulary, then foster their love for reading and writing, and promote empathy and understanding. So yun, that's why, partner, I can say it's worth listening because the discussion was overflowing with new learning, di ba?
Agree ako dyan, Christian. Nakita naman natin ang husay ng ating naunang speaker.
Now that the first part of our webinar is over, ay wag munang aalis ang ating mga participants dahil magkakaroon pa tayo ng part 2.
Tama ka dyan, partner. Hindi pa dyan natatapos ang lahat dahil magkakaroon pa tayo ng second part ng ating discussion.
Okay, but before we proceed, let's have a 2-minute health break. We will immediately resume after the 2 minutes. Okay, we're back. Nagka-technical problem lang yung partner ko. But we are back. Salamat mga kaguro sa patuloy na pagsama sa amin. I hope that you enjoy our short break. At dahil punong-puno tayo ng kaalamang nais ibahagi ngayong hapon, nandito na agad tayo upang pakinggan ang ating second speaker. And now, let's learn more from Mr. Paul Marcine Dayog to discuss the last two topics of our webinar.
Hello, hello. Am I audible? Hello? Ano? May I request a heart reaction so that I can know that I am audible on your end, your respective ends. Hello, hello. Am I audible? May I
Yes
request
po.
again? Thank you very much again kay sa ating unang speaker, si Trixie Mae for sharing us the first 2 points of our discussion for today. So ayun, balik agad tayo sa ating magiging discussion kasi medyo mas mas mahaba pa ito, pero given the time constraints, I will try to meet the expectation and also to deliver the topics very well. Kasi ito mas importante ito for me kasi yung mga nauna parang i-associate natin siya sa elementary level. Although makaka-encounter pa rin kayo ng mga bata na makakailanganin nyo yun dahil nga given the problems of illiteracy, but still we will have this second 2 points ating pag-aaralan para naman i-develop yung mga mas matataas na level ng literacy, lalo na sa high school level. Okay, now we will have first our first point of discussion is the developing functional literacy. Yun yung ating pangatlong point ng ating lesson. So may nasa pangatlong part na tayo ng ating webinar for today. First, let us define what is functional literacy. Ayun, as we can recall, yung functional literacy, itong una nating definition ay binigay sa atin ng naunang grupo sa nakaraan nating webinar na it is the ability to read, decode, and comprehend written materials needed to perform everyday vocational tasks. So ayun, hindi lang siya natatapos sa simpleng yung 'di ba ang kadalasang connotation natin sa literacy is magbasa. Dito dapat may purpose yung pagbabasa, may function. Ano yung function na yon? Needed na makapag-perform ng everyday vocational task. Ibig sabihin, kung ikaw po ay estudyante, kailangan yung pagiging literate mo ay nagse-serve sa function na ikaw ay natututo as a student. Kung ikaw naman ay teacher, kailangan literate ka sa mga iba't ibang strategies, pati materials, para magampanan yung trabaho mo na magtuturo. Kahit po sa simpleng yung pagtitinda, ayun, may functional literacy pinagagana doon kasi ginagamit ni tindera yung kanyang ability na makapagbasa, makapag-comprehend, makapag-decode ng messages, not only by yung pagbabasa ng as in ng actual material, kundi pati pakikipag-usap para magampanan yung kanyang professional task. Second definition is from UNESCO. Meron silang glossary of terms kasi. It is the capacity of a person to engage in all those activities in which literacy is required for effective function of his or her group and community, and also for enabling him or her to continue use reading, writing, and calculation for his or her own and communities development. Dito medyo lumalim na hindi dapat sumasapat na pansarili lang yung pagkakaunawa natin sa mga binabasa natin sa ating pagiging literate, yung ating literacy capacity, hindi dapat nakakulong sa pansarili nating function, kundi dapat may contribution, effective, nakakatulong hindi lang sa ating group, nabanggit pa nga po dyan, ay community. Andito yung 3 R's natin, yung reading, writing, and calculation. Pero binibigyang emphasis yung sa community development. Next slide po. So ayun, paano ba nade-develop yung functional literacy? According sa material na pag-aaralan natin ngayon, ang pang-develop daw po ng ating functional literacy ay yung tinatawag nating participatory approach. So ano muna yung participatory approach? Ito po in simplest terms ay tinatawag ding fry-run approach. Bakit po kaya tinawag na fry-run approach? Nanggaling po kay Paulo Freire. Ngayon, pag-aralan natin, next slide, kung sino si Paulo Freire. Si Paulo Freire po ay isang Brazilian educator na leading advocate ng tinatawag nating critical pedagogy. Yung influential niyang gawa, pinaka-influential niyang gawa, pinaka-ina-attribute sa kanya ay yung pag-pedagogy of the oppressed. Yun yung kung pinakabasihan na libro nung pagsusulong ng critical pedagogy. Next slide po. Ano ba yung main points ng pedagogy of the oppressed? Okay. Yung mga pinili po naming points ay mga summarization na lang po, kaya hindi po ito yung buong libro. So, andai talagang naiwan. Super dami nating matututunan dun sa librong Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Pero ito yung palagay naming may kinalaman para dun sa topic natin. Una, ano yung banking system of education? The banking system of education, ito po yung literal na bangko yung ginagawa ng teacher. Nagde-deposit siya ng kaalaman ng mga facts sa mga estudyante. At yung mga estudyante naman, mini-memorize o ini-store sa kanila yung knowledge na yon. Kakabit po natin dito yung simpleng memorization ng pagtuturo. Pag si teacher, turo lang ng turo. Ito ganito facts, ganito, tandaan niyo to. Nagde-deposit to siya sa bata. Si bata naman, nag-i-store lang nung knowledge. Tapos i-recall na lang niya yung knowledge na yun kapag may exam na. Yun po yung banking system of education. Ito po yung pinaka-kinokontra ng fry-run approach. Kasi po, ano daw po ang nagkakaroon kapag puro tayo banking system of education, nagkokos po siya ng narration sickness. Paano nangyayari yung narration sickness? Narration sickness yung parang nabobore na yung estudyante kasi hindi sila involved sa learning and teaching experience. Dalawang part. Again, learning, dapat natututo si bata. Kailangan nararamdaman niya yung active participation na nakapag-contribute siya sa pagkatuto nilang magkaklase, individually and as a group. Sa teaching experience naman po, hindi nararamdaman ng bata sa banking system of education kasi hindi siya nakakapag-share. Hindi siya nakakapag-bahagi ng kanyang experiences. At yung pagbabahagi niya ng experience na yun ay simple ng teaching experience. Ano pa po pwedeng mga example ng banking system na ito? Nakaranas na siguro kayo ng mga teacher kahit anumang level na halimbawa, kwento lang ng kwento. Tapos hindi nagkakaroon ng pagkakataon yung bata na makapag-share ng kanyang reaction din sa kwento. Yun, simpleng banking system of education. Nagpapakopya ng lecture, tandaan. Tapos by the book ang gustong sagot sa exam. That's a classic example of banking system of education na kinokontra ng tinatawag nating critical pedagogy. Okay. Sumunod sa second point, yung corpo conscientia. Ito naman po yung nangyayari, ano yung nade-develop daw, ano yung nagiging produkto ng tinatawag nating banking system of education at kapag may narration sickness na yung mga student. Yung corpo conscientia is the conscious but not really conscious. And malay ngunit hindi, may kamalayan ngunit hindi malay. Paano po nangyayari yon? Yun nga, ang galing-galing ng bata mag-memorize. Na-perfect niya yung exam kasi ang mga binibigay nating exam ay not authentic assessments. kundi mga written exam, nakakabisado niya yung facts. Pero hindi niya nararamdaman na sarili niyang knowledge yung natututunan niya. Hindi niya nade-develop yung sarili niya knowledge. So that is the corpo conscientia. Yun po yung nagiging produkto ng banking system of education. So may 4 points yung critical pedagogy. So, ang unang point is develop consciousness of freedom. Kailangan malaya yung bata. Ibig sabihin, yung learning ay inaari niya. May ownership ng learning. At nakakapag-contribute siya doon sa learning experience. Recognize authoritarian tendencies. Ano po yung tinutukoy na authoritarian tendencies? Authoritarian tendencies, yung kadalasan nag-a-appeal tayo sa authority na yung itinuturo ng teacher ay kadalasan kung ano yung gusto ng authority. Ano yung mga example ng authority? Gobyerno, status quo. Yung kapag kailangan na realize ng isang teacher na gumagamit ng critical pedagogy na yung popular opinion kadalasan nag-a-appeal sa status quo at hindi na-analyze yung ibang point of view. So kung ikaw ay naggagawa ng classroom na may critical pedagogy, kailangan may recognition na, uy, yung baka yung opinion natin ay hindi siya totally tama, kundi appealing to the authority or the status quo. Next, connect knowledge to power. Kailangan nakikita rin ng teacher at ng student na realize nila na yung kaalaman ay may kinalaman sa kapangyarihan. Kung sino yung may kapangyarihan, kadalasan sila yung mas maraming access sa kaalaman and vice versa. Kung sino na may maalam, siya yung kadalasang nag-gain ng mas malaking power. And last is the ability to take constructive action. Hindi dapat natatapos sa recognition sa yung alam lang natin na ganun pero wala tayong ginagawa. The main point of critical pedagogy is to attain or to construct solutions and actions dun sa mga observation na na-observe natin sa classroom. Next slide, please. Okay. Ano pa yung mga point ng libro ni Paulo Freire? Sunod naman po, yung dialogue develops critical thinking and enables teacher to teach and to be taught, also known as the dialogical education. So sa pag-uusap daw po natin sa classroom, simple nating pagtatanong sa mga estudyante, ano palagay niyo, opinion niyo dito, tama ba yung ginagawa natin, o sa tingin niyo ba tama yung ginagawa kong tinuturo sa inyo. The dialogue, yung pag-uusap, doon pa lang nade-develop na yung critical thinking ng mga tinuturuan. Ang tawag po natin diyan ay dialogical education. Last point is the use of praxis. Again, ang main point nga ng critical pedagogy is to create constructive action, makabuo ng mga action. So praxis is the application of theories. Yung kung pag meron tayong theory na palagay natin magiging solution, kailangan andoon yung application. Tapos kung ma-disprove natin, kung napatunayan natin mali, yun, nagawa natin yung tinatawag nating praxis part. Action and reflection ng ating mga ginawa. Next po. So sa participatory approach, ang mga definition natin is it is a teaching strategy that incorporates themes or contents that are of the interest of the learners. Pinakamahalaga na interesado ang learners. Ang goal ay tulungan yung estudyante na maintindihan the social, cultural, and historical forces that affect their lives. Kailangan hindi yung kung ano lang nakasulat sa libro, yun po yung nagiging kinakampihan ng mga estudyante. Kailangan may karapatan sila na i-considera yung personal spaces nila, yung sa bahay, yung kanilang paninindigan, the gender themselves, yung kanilang cultural beliefs, para kontrahin or sang-ayunan at i-analyze yung tinuturo sa isang classroom. That is the participatory approach. Next slide po. So, paano natin magagawa yung participatory approach? Kailangan, tinutulungan natin ma-empower yung mga estudyante na bumuo ng action at magdesisyon. At kailangan yung control nasa kanila. Kailangan meron nga, again, paulit-ulit na sense of ownership sa teaching and learning experience, lalo na dun sa action na gagawin nila. Next slide again. So, for the participatory approach, ito po yung mga example. Pair work. Yung mag-uusap sila halimbawa, bibigyan nyo sila ng task, tapos po, pagtulungan nyo. Kasi may dialogue na mangyayari dun sa mga bata. Ganon din po sa group work. Mangyayari po yan kapag merong brainstorming na nagaganap sa kanilang activity. Full class work, two-way dialogue, problem posing, yung pong magbibigay ka ng problem, tapos magre-react sila. Magre-react sila ng mga possible solutions. Ang problem solving naman po, bibigyan mo sila ng problem, then they will try to solve the problem. Meron ng action na nangyayari. Yun po yung mga six simplest example para magawa natin yung participatory approach. Again, yung participatory approach, yung ating gagawin para ma-attain yung development of the functional literacy. Yun lang po yung ating third point for this webinar. Let us proceed to the next point, our last point of discussion about the teaching strategies ng ating webinar ngayon. So we have the 21st century literacy skills and teaching resources. These are subdivided into 5 points. Unahin po natin yung point number 1 natin, which is the student-led learning. So may tatlong important words. Student, estudyante, led, nangunguna, and the learning, natututo. So it is where the students themselves facilitate their learning. Student yung nagpa-facilitate ng kanilang, yung mismong nag-aasikaso ng kanilang pagkatuto. It steps away from one-size-fits-all model and embraces personalized learning ethos by helping students discover their own learning potential. So, lumalayo na ito sa isang teaching style. Halimbawa, gusto ko ganito, magbasa lang kayo, tapos gawa kayong summary. Paano kung hindi nagwo-work yun sa isang estudyante? Dito, ini-embrace na natin, tinatanggap na natin na magkakaiba ang learning style ng mga estudyante. At kailangan, hindi yun natatapos sa pag-embrace lang ng personalized learning. Kailangan may product. Ano yung product na yun? Nadi-discover ng estudyante yung kanyang learning potential. Next slide, please. Next naman, ayun, mapapansin nyo sa third point, hinahayaan natin yung mga bata na sa kanilang pagkatuto, mag-trial and error. Tapos hindi natin dinidiscourage yung mali. Hindi natin sasabihin na mali sila, kundi tanggapin yung pagkakamali kung mali. Kailangan walang negative connotation na ay mali, hindi mo na maiintindihan yung lesson, mali yung ginagawa mo. Kundi ina-appreciate natin yung pagtatry nila independently yung attempts nila na matutunan yung topic on their own. Next is the development of the critical thinking and problem solving skills. So alam naman na natin yung critical thinking and problem solving, and it increases the engagement in the classroom kasi estudyante yung nangungunan ng ating learning experience. So mas mataas yung participation na aasahan natin dahil sila nga yung leader ng learning experience. Next slide, please. Ayun, paano natin gagawin yun sa ating classroom? May 5 tayong pwedeng mga simplest ways na gawin para ma-attain yung tinatawag nating student-led classroom. Una, rearrange the classroom. Simple classroom layout ay malaking bagay para makapag-encourage ng participation at student-led learning sa ating classroom. Halimbawa, meron kang debate. Gagawin mo, syempre, hindi uubra yung dating upuan nyo na nakaharap lahat dun sa isa. Sa board, yung upuan, yung mga nakaharap lahat. Kung gusto mo may dalawang panig, i-rearrange mo yung mga upuan. Pagharapin mo yung mga upuan ninyo sa dalawang team, o pwedeng ganon. Kapag meron naman halimbawang discussion na parang webinar style or seminar style na estudyante yung magiging speaker, pwede mong gawin na rearrange semicircle yung upuan. Semicircle. So the simple rearrangement of the classroom can make the difference of the yung allocation kung sino yung magiging facilitator ng learning. Kasi yung conventional na layout ng mga upuan, teacher ang main speaker. Yun. Kapag binago natin yung mga arrangement ng upuan or the furnitures themselves, pwede na nating i-delegate yung task ng facilitation of learning sa ating mga estudyante. 2 is the development of self-awareness. Again, Kagaya ng mga nabanggit kanina, kailangan nagiging self-aware. Thinking about thinking, nakakapag-develop ng metacognition yung ating mga estudyante para masabi nating student-led classroom siya. So, kailangan may flexible learning environments tayo na create para sa ating mga estudyante. Next, use of individualized learning applications. May mga tasks tayo na iba-ibang tasks yung pinagagawa natin base sa choice ng mga bata. Halimbawa, binibigyan natin sila ng option, may topic tayo na reaction sa positibong epekto ng social media. Kung ngayon, yung iba, pwede mo sabihin, pwede kayong gumawa ng vlog, pwede kayong gumawa ng spoken poetry, pwede kayong gumawa ng kanta. Ayun, individualized learning yon. Kasi iba-ibang task yung may opportunity yung mga bata, may kalayaan yung mga bata na i-apply yung strengths nila. Next, aim for conceptual understanding. Kailangan the concept pa rin, hindi napapabayaan. Tapos yung mga estudyante mismo, yung nagdi-discover, no? Halimbawa, binigyan mo sila, kadalasan po, para sa inyo na kung laging social science yung kadalasan na maibibigay. The effects of social media nga, kailangan yung mga bata yung nag-analyze ng, sila yung nagbibigay ng pagkakaunawa nila sa ano ba yung possible effects of social media. And 5, gaya nga nung metacognition, kailangan may encouragement ng reflection. Nare-reflect ng bata saan sila tama, saan sila mali. Kailangan, ay ito, magandang strategy ito, ulitin ko to. Ay, pangit na strategy ito, siguro i-improve ko or wag ko nang gawin. Kailangan dun sa learning na ginagawa nila, strategies nila na personal, ay may personal reflection din. Alin ang effective, alin ang effective. That would be the how to create student-led classroom. Next point would be, ano naman yung tinatawag nating student-led learning? Student-led learning, as given in the instruction to us, is the cooperative learning also. Yan isang example ng student-led learning, the cooperative learning. So, cooperative learning is an instructional strategy that enables small groups of students to work together on a common assignment. May cooperation, may tulungan. The parameters often vary. Students can work collaboratively on a variety of problems, ranging from simple math problems to large assignments such as proposing environmental solutions on a national level. Mamaya mababalikan natin yung cooperative learning kasi magtatakal din tayo ng collaborative learning. So we will try to differentiate and compare and contrast those two terms. Next slide please. Meron tayong ngayon tinatawag na 5 basic elements para masabing successful yung ginagawa nating small group learning. According to Johnson & Johnson noong 1990. Una, positive interdependence. Ito yung feeling na responsible ang bawat isa sa kanilang pansarili at group effort. Ibig sabihin, feeling pa lang to feeling pa lang na nagwo-worry sila. Di ba, wala pa kaming gawa. O ikaw, personally, aware ka na, yung effort namin parang kulang pa. Ganon. O tapos, minsan personal ito or as a group, baka yung hindi ko paggawa nung part ko, hindi pa nakaka-apekto na sa group namin. So, yun yung positive interdependence. Next is the face-to-face interaction. Students encourage and support one another. The environment discourages discussion and eye contact. Encourages discussion and eye contact. Kapag face-to-face interaction, yun kadalasan yung nagpapalakas, nag-strengthen ng ating cooperative learning. Kasi nakikita ng mga estudyante kung paano sila mag-work, paano sila gagalaw, paano sila nagre-react sa mga contribution na bawat isa. Next is individual and group accountability. Each student is responsible for doing their part. Pag-ibahin natin sila ni positive interdependence para hindi nakakalito. Feeling of responsibility. Students feel responsible. Yun yung positive interdependence. Pero yung actual accountability, kung nagagawa na ba nila yung actual na trabaho, yung actual na paggawa, ito na po yung individual and group accountability. Medyo similar sila ng positive interdependence, pero make sure lang natandaan na yung feeling of responsibility, yun po yung positive interdependence. Pero yung actual distribution of work, tapos yung actual contribution na yung pinag-uusapan, yun yung individual and group accountability. Kailangan namimit nila yung goal nila. Social skills, kailangan para masabi nating matagumpay yung ating small group learning, natututo yung bata ng social skills. Kung paano niya i-communicate yung kanyang lapses, yung kanyang pagiging advanced sa mga topics or sa task. Yun, social skills dapat yung na-develop nila. And group processing, kailangan na-analyze nila sa sarili nila at yung grupo nila, paano ba sila nag-work together? Saan ba kami kulang? Saan ba kami magaling? Yun. Na-proproseso nila sa isip nila what strategies made them better or worse. Next slide tayo. Ayun, nakatapos na po tayo sa una natin. Again, that is for the student-led learning, also known as the cooperative learning. Let us go now to the second point. Next slide, please. That would be the inquiry-based classroom environment. So, inquiry-based classroom environment, ito po ay student-centered, again, teaching method na ini-encourage natin yung mga estudyante to ask question and investigate real-world problems. So, pasimplihin na natin, ito po ay inquiry-based, nakabase sa tanong. Tanong, yun yung pinakamahalagang element. May tanong yung mga estudyante. Ano yung mga tanong na yun? Kadalasan, problema yung tanong nila. Tapos, actively engaged dapat yung mga estudyante at merong pagkakataon na i-explore yung kanilang curiosity. Kasi nga nagtatanong. Parang yung mga bata, tanong ng tanong. Next slide, please. Ano po yung mga essential components ng classroom-based environment? Next. Essential components na tayo. Ayan. Orientation or observation. The teacher introduces a new topic or concept. Students explore through research, direct instruction, and hands-on activities. Una, may orientation muna, may observation muna. What is the problem? Ano ba yung topic natin? Ano ba yung pag-uusapan natin? Yun, may orientation muna. Ino-orient mo yung bata at sila nag-o-observe muna. Second, ito na, yung question. Bumubuo na yung mga estudyante ng question. Nag-create na sila ng prediction. Halimbawa, research yan, experimental, may prediction na sila. Ano yung prediction pa na yun? Hypothesis. Nag-hypothesize na sila. O, kapag may tanong na, meron na silang palagay nilang hypothesis. Ano susunod? Investigation. The research itself. This is the lengthiest part. Ito pinakamahaba. Kasi dito, sinusubukan na nila kung tama o mali. Kung tama ba yung null hypothesis. If they will accept or reject the null hypothesis. 4 is the conclusion. Ang number 4, the conclusion, yung from the data na nag-gather nila dito sa investigation, nagko-conclude na sila, ay mali yung hypothesis namin. Tama yung hypothesis namin. And number 5, I'm sorry, mukhang wala dyan, is the discussion or sharing. Kailangan hindi natatapos yung bata na nasagot lang nila yung tanong. Kailangan dinidiscuss nila yung tanong. Sinishare nila yung result ng kanilang pag-aaral. Nung kanilang inquiry. Pinakamagandang example na nga nito, yung science experimental research. Una, orientation. Mag-represent muna ng halimbawa topic si teacher or sila mismo maghahanap sila ng possible topics. Then the question, gagawa na sila ng mga tanong nila. Ano ba yung gusto nating hypothesis? Ano ba yung gusto nating pag-aralan? Number 3, investigation. Ano na sila, gagawa na sila ng mismong experiment nila, yung actual execution na ng pagtetest. Number 4, kumbaga sa research to, ito na yung chapter 4 and 5. Nasagot na nung experiment, nung investigation natin yung pinakatanong. And number 5, discussion or sharing. Pine-present mo na halimbawa sa panel yung discussion mo. Kahit palpak pa yan o matino, yung experiment mo, you will share the result kasi may natutunan ka pa rin. May natutunan ka pa rin from your inquiry. Next slide, please. We also have 4 types of inquiry-based learning sa classroom na ito. May 4 types tayo. Una, structured inquiry. Sinusundan ni students yung mga instruction teacher. Masyado siyang structured kasi pati mga tasks na gagawin ay si teacher ang nagbibigay. Pati resources na panggagaling niya. Lahat, pati assessment. Paano nila malalaman na tama yung kanilang solution. May tanong, the inquiry is there, pero si teacher yung nag-prepare ng process. Paano gagawin yung tanong? Next is controlled inquiry. The student explore one question from the different questions generated by the teacher. Halimbawa, nag-float si teacher, meron siyang gustong central idea pero ayaw niya ipahalata. Tapos si student, sila yung magre-realize, ano ba yung one question na gustong malaman ni teacher? Pero, ang nagbigay pa rin ng resources ay si teacher. Siya pa rin yung naghanda ng mga libro, ng mga materials na gagamitin to investigate. Pero dapat si student na yung nakaka-realize kung ano ba yung gusto ni teacher na masagot namin for the students. So that is the controlled inquiry. For guided inquiry, bibigyan sila lang ng topic, tapos sila yung gagawa ng tanong. Tapos si student din yung mamimili ng resources na gagamitin niya to answer the question. That is guided inquiry. Paano pumasok yung guide? Kasi si teacher pa rin yung nag-introduce ng topic. And for the free inquiry, si student, simula sa topic, pagbuo pa lang ng topic, hanggang sa resources, pati pag-customize ng kanilang summative assessment, sila na gumagawa. Si student na yung nagiging parang leader nung assignment na yun kasi free nga. Sila yung ito na talaga parang pang higher order thinking skills na to eh. Kasi si student na yung bahala sa lahat. Si teacher parang nagiging consult na lang. Consultation na lang yun ang kaya. So those are the 4 types of inquiry-based learning. Next, we have also 4 models of inquiry-based learning na pwede natin gamitin sa classroom. Una, the question model. Question model, ito yung pinaka-basic na model kasi nagtatanong ka lang, nagtatanong ka sa mga estudyante mo, then they will try to answer that by thinking critically base dun sa material na binigay mo. Problem-based learning naman, may problema, bibigay mo. Tapos, ang ipro-provide nila ay solution. Sa question model kasi pwedeng walang solution. Sa problem-based, ang pinaka-point is ang maging sagot ay solution. Sa project-based naman, bibigyan mo sila ng topic, tapos gagawa sila ng project as a solution. Medyo similar sa problem-based, pero not necessarily kasi problem yung binibigay mo. Kundi gagawa ka lang ng project or a topic yung gagawan lang ng project. Example po ng problem-based learning saka project-based. Sa problem-based, halimbawa, direct, sabihin mo, bumuo ng concept paper about sa solusyon na nakikita mo upang lutasin ang classroom waste management. Yun, problem-based. Kailangan makapag-provide sila ng solution. Sa project-based naman, magbuo ng halimbawa program of activities na magpro-promote sa lab of reading. Yun. Not necessarily a problem yung lab of reading, pero hinihingan mo yung estudyante mo ng solution. Next, the inquiry cycle of model. Ito po yung iniikot-ikot nyo lang, may cycle. Paano yun? Una, bibigyan mo ng topic. Tapos yung estudyante, magtatanong about dun sa topic. Tapos sila mag-investigate na rin about dun sa topic. Tapos i-share nila yung findings. Ikaw naman uli, pwede ka magtanong ka naman about dun sa share nila na findings. Tapos yun, sila naman magtatanong. Again, parang may cycle. Yun. Ang kaibahan, siguro dito naha-highlight yung sharing of the findings. Kasi sa problem-based, pwedeng ikaw lang ang makabasa ng solusyon nila. Sa project-based, pwedeng ikaw lang din makakita ng project nila. Pero sa inquiry cycle, mahalagang component po yung sharing of the learnings. Next slide po for the last point natin para sa inquiry-based learning. Ano yung example? Kagaya nga po nung naibigay ko kanina, science experiments are a good example of inquiry-based learning. Field trips, kasi yung field trips, hindi naman po talaga dapat yan, yung simpleng naglilibot lang. Kailangan talaga meron yung reflection sa mga bata, ano yung natutunan mo, ano yung mga na-observe mo. Tapos kailangan may tanong sila. Kaya yun lang, medyo nawawala lang siguro yung real essence ng field trips kasi natatatak sa isip na yan yung pupunta kami sa magagandang lugar. Kaya nga kung totoong seseryosohin ni student-centered, ang field trip kailangan nakabase yan sa tanong ng mga estudyante. Ano ba yung gusto nyo matutunan? Kailangan reflection yan ng ano yung gusto nating ang field natin gusto i-expose yung mga bata para masagot yung question na. Next, classroom debate. Siyempre, may tanong. Tapos pwedeng may dalawang panig or maraming panig. Tapos discussion of those sides. Yun. Simpleng inquiry-based. At again, may inquiry pa rin. Yung problema, yung pagdidebatihan. Sa projects, o pwedeng mga solusyon yan, yung projects, kaya may tanong pa rin. And group work. Yung simpleng group work, bibigyan mo sila ng tanong na kailangan nila sagutin. Yun. Classic example na yun ng inquiry-based learning. Ayun, may I request po na mag-heart react na kung nasusundan pa tayo sa ating mga topic. Pa next slide na po. Yun, salamat sa mga nag-heart react. And let us have our third point of this discussion. The collaborative learning. Collaborative learning is an active learning that involves several students working together and sharing the workload equitably as they progress towards intended learning outcomes. Ayun, may equitable na pag-share ng workload. Kailangan yung work as a group, as a team. Collaboration and equitable division of work engages students actively in their own learning and in a supportive and challenging social context. Next slide po. Ayun, kadalasan na pagpapalit or pinaggagawang ibig sabihin ng cooperative learning and collaborative learning. Pero sa totoo lang po, dapat hindi. Pero napansin ko naman po sa materials natin na yung goal kadalasan isa lang. Pero sige, try pa rin natin pag-differentiate din. Ano yung cooperative learning? Ano yung collaborative learning? Pag una sa mission ng cooperative learning is to delegate sub-task. Kung natatandaan niyo po, pinag-aralan natin to sa PSTM, sa Principles and Strategies in Teaching Mathematics. Kadalasan yung cooperative learning, kailangan parang iba-iba yung ginagawa. Tapos nagtutulungan lang to consult each other, ganon. May different goals, tapos limited yung responsibility ng mga members. Unlike sa collaborative learning, may common task, may common goals, tapos may sense of community. Mas malakas yung orientation nila sa mga sarili nila, yung pagkakasundo nila sa sarili nila. Kapag collaborative learning, na yung gawa natin ay gawa natin. Unlike sa cooperative learning, parang yung gawa natin, oo, kanya-kanya, pero parang pinagsama-sama lang natin kasi parts siya nung isang goal. Pero may different goals pa rin sila kasi may respective tasks sa cooperative learning. Sa collaborative learning, again, mas malakas yung orientation na may community sila o may group sila as a whole at yung task na yung mission nila is to make that bond stronger para ma-attain yung common goal nila ngayon. For the work naman po, closed assignment, predictable processes, and static. Ito po yung kadalasang napansin kong kapag hardline talaga. Kasi pag sinabi natin hardline, as in gusto nating i-differentiate yung cooperative and collaborative learning. Kapag cooperative learning daw po, kadalasan si teacher pa rin yung main facilitator of learning. Siya yung nagbibigay ng possible task na close assignment, yung mga predictable processes. Halimbawa po, gumamit tayo short film. Si teacher, kapag cooperative learning at short film, gusto niya may director, may writer, may 3 artista. Siya nagsasabi ng task, siya nagsasabi ng assignment. May number talaga. Yun yung isang pwedeng atake sa cooperative learning kapag short film. Pag naman po collaborative learning at short film, open assignment, unpredictable process, and dynamic. Student ang bahala. Ang sasabihin mo lang sa student, gawa kayo ng short film. Sila mag-a-assign ng task nila. Sila mag-open yung pag-a-assign nila ng task. Ikaw, magugulat ka, pwedeng sa ibang grupo, iisa yung director o writer. Yung grupo isa yung director at writer, sa iba tawag dito may bukod na director, may bukod na writer. The development of webinar naman po, pwede po siyang cooperative learning if kung base po dito sa naging reference natin, kapag yung teacher nag-a-assign ng expected niyang task. Halimbawa, o gusto ko dalawa lang ang speaker, gusto ko ay may ganito, may taga-share ng screen, gusto ko may taga-prepare ng Google Form. Yon, cooperative. Nagiging collaborative po siya kapag yung mga student pa rin yung nagdidesisyon ng division of labor nila. Division of labor nila para po dun sa work. Yun po. Pero again, yung cooperative and collaborative learning ay medyo similar naman po. So, binigay lang po namin to highlight the difference para at least alam natin kung ano yung cooperative and collaborative learning. In this, yung ating pong pagka-create ng webinar ngayon ay collaborative pa naman po kasi student pa rin po yung nagdidesisyon kung ano yung mga roles na gagawin natin. So yung webinar na ginagawa natin ngayon, more on collaborative learning pa rin po. Sa product naman po.
Agree po. Collaborative po yan, sir, ha? Hindi cooperative. Collaborative. Kasi, yes, I did say, sige po, groups po tayo. There are 4 lessons, so 4 groups. Hanggang dun lang po ako, di po ba? Sa 4 groups. Sino ang nag-groupings kayo-kayo? Di po ba? Tapos po, sabi ko, assign a leader. Yes, obviously, every group will have a leader. Tapos, ang leader ang bahala, di po ba? Siya na po ang nagsabi na ikaw ang bahala sa tech, ikaw ang bahala sa research, ikaw ang bahala sa paggawa ng Google Form. Kaya tama ka. Ang collaborative learning po, ito pong webinar, ang mga webinars na ginagawa nyo, talaga pong collaborative. Tapos talaga pong ito po ay inyo po talaga. Output po ninyo talaga. Ang pinaka-output ko po dito sa ganitong klaseng instructional material is yung pong hinahayaan ko kayong gawin kung anong gusto nyo gawin. Yun po. Kasi as it is, yung module po, pero yung module ko po is only, what? It's only a guide eh. And I see you presenting even more ideas. Dana, thank you very much, Paul. You are really doing very, very well. Salamat. Go ahead.
Thank you po. Pabalik po ng slide natin para po doon sa last 2 points. Again, punta na tayo sa product. Sa cooperative learning, kadalasan po, production yung tinitingnan na goal and known product yung gagawin. Kung gagawa natin ng hardline, again, na pagkakaiba. So, sa collaborative naman, development of a new product. O, gamitin uli natin yung short film. Kapag po production na cooperative learning, halimbawa, ang magiging instruction mo, gumawa ng short film about sa interpretation ng may kukopyahin sila, halimbawa, na short film. Ayun, as in gagayahin nila. That's the production. Kasi may ine-expect ka na may ine-expect ka na gawa. May gagayahin na sila. Sa development of a new product naman po, sa collaborative, bahala pa rin yung estudyante sa kung anong klase ng eksena yung i-represent nila sa short film. Halimbawa, meron po tayong libro na may short film na nagawa yung mga estudyante. Gusto mo may gayahin lang. Cooperative learning yon. Kapag po gagawa sila ng own interpretation, that's the collaborative learning. And for team relations, kapag po cooperative learning, mutual independence. Kasi nga, kanya-kanya, may kanya-kanya ng task. Yun, kanya-kanya. Walang masyadong, kung halimbawa may pumalpak man, hindi masyado naapektuhan yung isang group. Kaya lang, may kulang na part. Nandun pa rin po yung nagkukulang yung part. Tapos, dyan nga po, nakalagay na asynchronic kadalasan. Hindi na madalas magkita-kita ng synchronous, hindi need yung kadalasang synchronous na pagkikita, mapa-online or face-to-face kasi hindi nga naaapektuhan yung inyong gawa. Pagdating naman po sa sa collaborative learning, may mutual dependence. So kadalasan nakarely yung contribution ng bawat isa sa kabuuan. Kailangan nag-connect-connecta pa rin po yung ating mga gawa. So madalas kapag collaborative learning, mahalaga ang contribution ng individual members. Unlike sa cooperative learning, yung individual members pwedeng minimal lang yung epekto sa overall output. Yun po yung ating mga pinagkaiba ng cooperative learning and collaborative learning. Punta naman po tayo, syempre kung may pagkakaiba, dapat may similarities. And ito naman po yung sa tingin kong goal ng bakit ito kasama sa ating lesson. Kundi, the similarities of the cooperative and collaborative learning. Una, rely on student participation. Hindi passive or lecture-based, hindi yung turo lang ng turo. Kundi student pa rin yung nangunguna sa pagpa-participate sa ating discussion. Then, assume a degree of responsibility for their own learning. Yung mga estudyante, yung pinaka-responsible sa kung paano sila matututo. Teachers act as facilitators na lang. Hindi na sila yung pinaka-source. Kung dati, naabutan siguro, lalo na kung pre-K to 12, na yung teacher kadalasan natatapos yung classroom, siya lang turo ng turo. Pero sa K to 12, ang design niya kasi, facilitator na lang si teacher, na siya lang yung tagabantay kung magiging magiging hardline again, tagabantay na lang ng pagkatuto ng mga bata. Bali siya lang nagsasabing kino-consult na lang siya. Next, require pupils to complete tasks. Ito po yung mahalaga. Yung pupils, sila yung dapat nakakatapos ng gawain. Hindi siya collaborative and cooperative learning. Kung oo, nag-groupings yung mga ending, ala namang product. That's not learning. Ano lang yun? Strategy lang yun. Pero walang product yung ginagawa mo. Instill team building skills and encourage social interaction. Siyempre, obvious kapag cooperative and collaborative learning, andun yung pagkakaroon ng sense of a team. Kahit pa mutual independence yan or mutual dependence, kailangan meron pa ring sense of team building. And andun pa rin yung social interaction. Help to prepare students for the world of work. Kasi sa labas, alam naman natin, kadalasan ng trabaho, may kasamahan. So yun, kailangan nahahanda yung mga estudyante natin. Enhance deeper cognitive skills. Yung deeper cognitive skills, yun, mamaya makakarating po tayo sa HATS. So yun, pwede nating maituring na deeper cognitive skills yon. Tapos, syempre, nagke-create sila ng solution, nagke-create ng product. Yun, already an enhancement of the deeper cognitive skills. Next, create shared learning experience. Kailangan yung mga magkakagrupo, yung simpleng pag-uusap nila, huy, nahirapan ako sa ganito, hindi ko maisip to, uy, patulong nga, uy, nahirapan ako, nagets mo ba? Yun, simpleng manifestation na agad yun ng shared learning experience. Next, increase level of information retention kasi sila yung gumagawa eh. Kadalasan, yung information, sila talaga yung pinaka-nakakaalam. Mas nare-retain nila. Yung tipong tapos na yung report, tapos na yung task. Alam pa rin ng mga estudyante kasi personalized nga yung pagkatuto. And lastly, embrace student diversity. Maraming uri ng diversity. Pwedeng sa academic, pwedeng sa mismo cultural background. Kaya lang, kailangan, andun pa rin yung facilitation na may equity base sa pangangailangan at kakayanan. Tapos, hindi yung, halimbawa, puro matatalino, magkakasama, puro yung mga napag-iwanan, sila magkakagrupo. Kailangan hindi naluluk mo rin yon as a teacher na yung groupings mo ay fair and equitable. Next slide po. Ayun. For the collaborative learning task, ayan, may mga example tayo. Group or pair discussion, kagaya ng listening triangles, talk partners, think, pair, or share. Yung snowballing, ano lang yan. Halimbawa, isasabihan ka muna ng isang estudyante, tapos yung isang estudyante na yun, sasabihan yung dalawang kaklase niya. Yung dalawang kaklase niya, sasabihan yung dalawang kaklase nila. Parang pyramid. Pero ayun, ang sinishare natin na information, hindi yung open-minded ka ba? Yun, para lang networking. Pero when it comes to the learning, ganun po yung snowballing. For the number 2 naman, working on shared tasks. In example, yung mga matching, sorting, and ranking. Yun, may shared tasks. Ayun, already a collaborative learning activities. Self-explanatory naman yan. Kapag may games and activities with a competitive element, kasi may goal o nagkikipag-compete, halimbawa grouping, so sige, may unahang makapuntos, tulong-tulong, yung isang contest natin dati sa Matrix, yung Matril, ayun, so competitive, yun, saka collaborative din yun. Next, drama and role play. Kapag inuutosan mo sila, lalo na pag groupings na bumuo ng drama and role play sa classroom, ayun, simpleng manifestation na yun ng collaborative learning activities. And last is the mga information exchange activities, kagaya ng barrier games, saka rainbowing. Yun lang po yung mga example natin ng learning activities for the collaborative learning. Next naman po, fourth part na tayo. Ayan, matatapos din tayo. Next naman po natin ay HATS activities. O, ngayon, let us recall muna, ano po muna yung HATS? O, yung HATS ay, acronym siya ng Higher Order Thinking Skills. Kailangan nade-develop critical thinking. Tapos, ang pinaka-main, yung pinaka-simpleng paliwanag, hindi yan simpleng memorization of facts. Meron tayong tinatawag na revised Bloom's taxonomy. Meron di ba yun na 6 na cognitive domains? Yung una, remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. Kadalasan po, ang analyzing, evaluating, and creating, the top 3 levels sa Bloom's taxonomy, yung tinutukoy na higher order thinking skills. Yun po. Yung pong applying, kadalasan, minsan middle order thinking skills tawag sa kanya. Minsan, binibilang din na SATs. Pero for the sake of this discussion, ang i-consider na lang po natin yung convention na analyzing, evaluating, and creating. Next slide. Let us have, ano ba yung mga possible na question kapag analyzing? Ito na, mga HATS activities na to. Pag analyzing daw po, examining and breaking information down into parts, identifying motives and causes, making inferences, and find evidence to support generalizations. Mga example po niyan ay, how is this similar to? Paano to natutulad sa ganitong sitwasyon? Pag compare and contrast yung mga Venn diagram sa math, ayan, simpleng analyzing activities. What are the possible outcomes? Ano yung, di ba, bibigyan mo sila ng situation, tapos pipredict nila ano mangyayari. Distinguish between, pag-iibahin. Yun po yung mga example ng analyzation. Yung mga question na yan, makitandaan po for the HATS activities. Next is the, mas tumaas pa tayo. Tumaas pa tayo sa evaluating. For evaluating, ang mga question naman po dyan ay presenting and defending opinions. Nag-evaluate ka na. Ano yung in-evaluate mo? Yung judgment mo about the information. Nagiging meron ka ng opinion. Ano yun? Judge the value of. Pag sinabing judge the value, sa tingin mo, gaano kabuti o kasama? Do you think this is good or bad? How would you feel if yung ganito? Anong mararamdaman mo pag ganito? How effective are? Gaano ka-epektibo ito? Yun. Meron ka ng evaluation, meron ka ng reaction, meron ka ng judgment dun sa situation na ibibigay sa'yo. Again, that is evaluating and that is a higher order thinking skill. And lastly, yung pinakamataas natin, next slide, is creating. Creating is compiling information in a different way by combining elements in a pattern, proposing alternative solutions through generating, planning, or producing. O yun, create. Pinakasimple. Basta bumubuo na yung mga bata. Can you design, kaya mo ba bumuo ng graph to, yung parang concept map, mga gano'n. Yun, basta sila yung gagawa. How many ways can you, sa ilang paraan mo kaya pwedeng gawin to? Anong mangyayari kapag, ang kaibahan nito dun sa kanina, sa prediction, ito, ang focus nitong what would happen if, hindi yung sitwasyon na ibinigay yung judge mo, kundi yung magiging epekto ng solusyon na na-create. And can you see a possible solution to? Halimbawa, tatanungin mo sila, kailangan yung solution nang gagaling sa estudyante. The initiative will come from the student. Sila yung mag-create ng idea. Yun lang po yung ating HATS activities. And last, punta na tayo sa ating last part ng ating discussion, the creative learning. Creative learning naman po, similar sa mga nauna, pero dito ang hina-highlight, kailangan creative yung process ng pag-acquire ng knowledge, kakaiba. Kailangan hindi yung simpleng pag-memorize, ganun. Hindi simpleng pagtatanda ng mga facts, kundi may creative na strategy yung teacher para magawa yung lesson, para matutunan ng bata yung lesson. At mapapansin nyo din po, yung mga learning activities na under dito sa creative learning activities, sila rin yung mga learning activities sa mga apat na nauna nating points kanina. Dito nagka-create din ng theories similar sa sa inquiry based learning. May test, may stories, may solution, analysis and designs. Tapos again, as opposed to simply trying to memorize information. Kaya siya creative kasi hindi nga siya simpleng memorization, hindi siya simpleng basa-basa lang. May analysis, may testing of theories na kagaya ng mga nauna natin. I will give you some examples, next slide po, of the creative learning activities. Pasensya na kung hindi na namin siya mabibigyan ng tigitigisang definition dahil malapit na maubos yung time natin. But next slide po, yung ating feel free to examine this by yourself, yung mga example po ng learning activities. Kagaya po ng mga abductive reasoning, hypothetical questions, ayun. These are 20 examples po ng mga learning activities na creative learning. Ayan, abstraction, improvisation, counterfactual thinking. Ayun, siguro ito yung number 9, maganda kasi ito. Counterfactual thinking, yung pasisinungalingan mo yung isang situation. Ayun. Kaya siya creative kasi parang kakaiba. Parang kukontrahin, di ba? Hindi siya yung simpleng magkakabisa ka lang na. And next slide po for 11 to 20. Ayan. May test and thought experiment. Pinagkaiba ni experiment and thought experiment. Sa experiment, may actual na application, may actual na pagtetest. Sa thought experiment, lang, parang hypothetical lang. Kung sa isip nyo lang, pagdidiskusyonan nyo lang yung yung hypothetically, yung mga sitwasyon. Prediction, debate, as you can see, similar lang din po sa mga nauna natin. Ngayon, wrap up tayo ng mga pinag-aralan natin. Yun pong 5 na yon na hinaba-haba po ng ating discussion. Yung tinatawag nating mga strategies at 21st century literacy skills and teaching resources. At ang pinaka main point po nito, kailangan student yung nangunguna sa learning. Tapos sila po may sense of ownership. Tayo mga teacher ay gabay lang ng atin gabay lang ng ating pagkatuto. Yun po, yung mga teacher gabay lang po sa mga estudyante sa kanilang pagkatuto, sa kanilang learning experiences. Tapos kailangan na i-develop yung critical thinking skills nila, yung mga higher order thinking skills. Kasi in a 21st century environment, yan na yung kinakailangan. We hope po that both our discussions na kanina with Ms. Trixie Mae and yours truly, nag-iwan po sa inyo ng maraming learnings at mai-apply po natin, hopefully, soonest opportunities kapag tayo na yung mga teacher. Hindi po, maraming salamat mga kaguro, and that is our report.
Okay, that was a great and very inspiring talk, partner. I feel like I learned more today about teaching strategies for the development of literary skills and teaching resources.
Ayan, napakagaling ng ating dalawang speakers. We hope that you've learned a lot from the two discussion today and it expanded your knowledge about the teaching strategies for the development of literacy skills and teaching resources.
Yeah.
Ayan, we can see that we really learned a lot from today's discussion. Let's now proceed on awarding the certificate of participation to our participants who attended today's webinar. Let us call on Mr. John Lander Hilario to read the content of the certificate.
Thank you, Alliyah. The Polytechnic University of the Philippines College of Education, Bachelor of Secondary Education major in Mathematics 3-1D, with a certificate of participation. This certificate is hereby awarded to the participants for participating in the webinar in building and enhancing new literacies across the curriculum, or BENLAC, held on April 26, 2023 via Zoom communications. Given this 26th day of April 2023 via Zoom communication, signed by Alliyah M. Reyes, Webinar Organizing Committee Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hilario. We are now inviting our participants to open their cameras for photo off.
Okay. First panel po, smile. 1, 2, 3, smile. Wait lang save ko lang. Next panel po. Wait lang. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay na.
Now we invite our classmates who will hopefully become future teachers to answer our Q&A by answering the 20-item quiz. We can see how much our participants have learned from the talks that just ended.
And in order to give an evaluation to this webinar, also answer the evaluation part. This will be important feedback on our performance. The Q&A and evaluation can be found in the same link that we will send to our GC. The said link will be open for 10 days or until May 6, 2023. Remember that no evaluation, no e-certificate.
Once again, we thank everyone who joined us for this webinar. For those of our classmates who did not attend, do not worry because the recording of our webinar can be watched on our section's YouTube channel. Again, I am Christian James P. Manalo.
And once again, I am Alliyah Reyes, and we are your Masters of Ceremony. Even though we finish our discussion with Mr. Paul and Ms. Trixie, our learning will not end there because we will be followed by additional discussions of our excellent professor on our course. But before we invite Dr. Rosalie Corpus to take the virtual floor as she gives additional inputs about the topics discussed, let's watch the PUP hymn.